December 1975. The snow fell softly on 112 Ocean Avenue, a stately Dutch colonial house with a dark secret. The Lutz family, George and Kathy, along with their 3 children, were moving in. They knew of the tragedy that had struck the previous year, but the house was a steal, spacious, beautiful, and surprisingly affordable. Little did they know, they were stepping into a nightmare beyond their wildest imaginations. George, a pragmatic man, dismissed the whispers of hauntings as superstitious nonsense. Kathy, however, couldn't shake off a growing unease. The house felt heavy, burdened by an unseen force. Their children, too young to understand the gravity of the situation, were nonetheless affected by the oppressive atmosphere. The Amityville house had begun to weave its dark magic. As days turned into nights, strange occurrences began. Foul odors, unexplained cold spots, and disembodied voices plagued their every move. The family tried to rationalize these events, clinging to their sanity, but the house was relentless, its grip tightening with each passing moment. The line between reality and nightmare blurred, pulling the Lutz family deeper into the abyss of the Amityville horror. The paranormal activity escalated at an alarming rate. Objects moved inexplicably, doors slammed shut on their own, and blood-curdling screams echoed through the empty halls. The children, particularly the youngest, Missy, began exhibiting strange behavior, talking to an imaginary friend named Jody, who seemed to reside within the house's walls. George, once a skeptic, found his composure crumbling. He became increasingly irritable, prone to fits of rage, and uncharacteristically distant from his family. Kathy, desperate for answers, stumbled upon the horrifying truth of the house's past. A year prior, Ronald DeFeo Jr. had shot and killed 6 members of his family in their beds, a chilling crime that shocked the nation. The murders, committed on a cold November night, sent shockwaves through the quiet town of Amityville. DeFeo claimed he was possessed by demonic forces that had driven him to the heinous act. The court, however, found him guilty and sentenced him to 6 consecutive life sentences. The house stood empty for months, a silent testament to the unspeakable horrors it had witnessed. The Lutz family, now aware of the house's gruesome history, realized with growing terror that they were not alone. The paranormal activity wasn't just random occurrences, it felt targeted, malevolent, as if an unseen entity was toying with them, feeding off their fear. The Amityville house was no longer just a home, it was a battleground for their sanity and their very souls. Delving into the history of 112 Ocean Avenue, Kathy discovered a long-forgotten truth. The land on which the house stood was once a Shinnecock Native American burial ground. Legend had it that the tribe used the site to confine their mentally ill, leaving them to suffer and eventually die. The energy of their anguish, their pain, seemed to seep into the very foundation of the house. The Dutch settlers who later claimed the land reported strange occurrences, unexplained illnesses, and a pervasive sense of dread. The darkness that clung to the land seemed to resist any attempt at purification. It was as if the ground itself was cursed, forever marked by the suffering it had absorbed. As the Lutz family grappled with the escalating paranormal activity, they began to question their own sanity. Was it the house with its dark history that was driving them to the brink, or were they projecting their own fears and anxieties onto the shadows? The line between reality and delusion blurred, making it impossible to discern the truth. The house, it seemed, had a way of amplifying the darkness within. George's temper became uncontrollable, his love for his family replaced by a chilling indifference. The children, once filled with laughter, grew withdrawn and fearful, their innocent eyes reflecting the terror that had taken root in their hearts. The Amityville house was slowly but surely consuming them all. Sleep offered no escape for the Lutz family. Nightmares plagued their rest, vivid and disturbing visions that left them drained and terrified. Whispers followed them through the darkened hallways, disembodied voices that seemed to taunt and torment. They spoke of unspeakable acts, of pain and suffering, their words dripping with malice. One name in particular echoed through the house: Jody. Missy, the youngest, claimed Jody was her friend, a playful spirit who resided in the house. But the adults felt a different presence, something sinister and ancient lurking beneath the surface. Jody, they feared, was not a harmless playmate but a conduit, a way for the darkness to infiltrate their lives. As the paranormal activity intensified, the Lutz family found themselves caught in a terrifying game. Doors slammed shut, trapping them in darkened rooms. Objects flew across the room, narrowly missing their targets. The house seemed to be toying with them, pushing them to the edge of their sanity. The family tried to fight back, to reclaim their home from the clutches of the unknown. They prayed, they sought solace in their faith. But the darkness only seemed to grow stronger. The Amityville house was a vortex of fear, and they were caught in its relentless pull. The house seemed to hold a particular fascination with George. He would spend hours in the basement, drawn by an unseen force. The basement, dark and damp, was where the DeFeo family met their gruesome end. It was a place of unspeakable tragedy, and George, once a loving husband and father, seemed inexplicably drawn to its darkness. Kathy watched in horror as her husband changed. He became withdrawn, his eyes distant and cold. His once warm embrace now felt suffocating, as if an imposter had taken over his body. The man she loved, the man who had vowed to protect her and their children, was gone, replaced by a stranger who terrified her. The children too suffered under the house's oppressive presence. They complained of nightmares, of unseen hands touching them in the night. Missy, still claiming Jody as her friend, began to exhibit disturbing behavior, drawing pictures of violence and death. The innocence of childhood had been stripped away, replaced by a chilling awareness of the darkness that surrounded them. The Lutz family, once a beacon of love and laughter, was now a fractured reflection of its former self. The Amityville house had driven a wedge between them, turning their love into fear, their hope into despair. They were prisoners in their own home, trapped in a nightmare they couldn't escape.